از دیرباز شنبه ها روی کانال یوتیوب هوما سرشار.
Our next speaker is HOMA SARSHAR. HOMA SARSHAR needs no introduction, especially none in Los Angeles. As a dedicated and inexhaustible broadcast and print journalist, as a freelance writer, as an organizer of several cultural events, as one of the directors of the Foundation for Iranian Women's Studies, she has enchanted and delighted many of us over and over again. Born in Shiraz, SARSHAR attended French schools in Iran. After receiving her Bachelor's of Arts degree in French and English literature from Tehran University, she started her profession as a translator and then as a journalist in Zan-e Ruz and Kehan. In 1972, she joined سازمان رادیو تلویزیون ملی ایران. 16 years later, she was forced into exile, where she continued her education at the University of Southern California and earned a Master's of Arts degree in communication. She founded and edited the monthly journal Shofar and delighted her many avid listeners with her programs in Radio Umid and Radio Televizione Umid Iran. SARSHAR's relationship with her writing, however, has always been quite a special one. As evidence and instance, allow me to read to you the first few lines of the second volume of her last publication, In the Back Alleys of Exile. My relationship with my pen, says HOMA SARSHAR, is quite peculiar. The two of us share a special work. At times, we're friendly. At others, we're not even on talking terms. Sometimes we get along. Sometimes we don't. Now and again, and I abandon it. Occasionally, it disobeys me. It obstinately and audaciously begrudges me. Every so often, my hands can't move to behold it. At times, swiftly, ever so softly and graciously, it rolls ahead of my thoughts on the paper and takes me by total surprise. Still, at other times, this slender and shapely figure sits motionless between my fingers and completely neglects its proprietor. And of course, when writing is such a labor of love, when writing is such an intense romance, such a unique undertaking, when the pen becomes a delightful, even if difficult lover, the outcome will be as special as In the Back Alleys of Exile. Published in 1993 by Kitab Corporation, the two volumes of this memoir are a reflection upon the concept and experience of exile. Through a detailed, day-to-day account of her life, the author brings fascinating perspectives on the complex nature and meaning of exile. Exile, far from being merely a nostalgic remembrance of things past, becomes a catalyst of change. It allows the author a breathtaking dynamism and mobility. It becomes an eloquent account of an apprenticeship to life, a personal and collective history of growth, change, adaptation, and adaptation. Indeed, In the Back Alleys of Exile is a chronicle of an evolving consciousness, the testament of a growing awareness. In other words, the author's ethnographic attempt in the back alleys of exile, her delineation of the collective experience of Iranians in Los Angeles, does not deprive her of numerous occasions and ample space to turn the gaze inward, to reflect upon the nature, the fluidity, and the complexity of the South. A candid examination of the narrative itself is one of the refreshingly subversive elements of this memoir. I say subversive because I believe the Iranian woman who has been privatized and erased from the public discourse has for long been without autobiographical possibility. The reluctance to talk freely and publicly about the South, however, is not confined to women alone. Iranian men, too, until very recently, have shunned self-representation. In fact, our traditional heroes have fascinating interlocutors. Hazrat Ali talked to a well. Rostam confided in his horse, Dash. Dashakol confessed to his cat. Nasiruddin Shah Qajar talked to his cat, Badri Khan. Thousands of Iranians confided and still confide in the mausoleums of holy saints. No wonder Patient Stone, Tang Sabur, is the preferred confidence of many Iranians. Nor is there a tradition of or relief in confession in its Catholic sense, or much confidence in its secular modern counterpart, psychotherapy. Clearly, this kind of cultural context is not really conducive to the development of personal life narratives and their generic uncovering and scrutiny of the South. On the contrary, it creates, expects, and even values a sharply defined separation between the inner and the outer, between the private and the public, between Zahir and Batin. HOMA, SARSHAR, however, like an exceptionally few women before her, assumes the task of narrating the self with candor, courage, and a healthy distance. Her memoir of exile is thus a valuable cultural and historical document. The very interaction between autography, ethnography, and memoir formats, I believe, creates a new ground in which the various modes and genres of writing create a new space, a space of in-betweenness, of mixing of definitions and categories, a space in which the observer and the observed, the narrator and the narrated, the creator and the creator become one. A space in which a personal story becomes a personal account of history, where a personal narrative is turned into a valuable work of ethnography. Please join me in welcoming a dear friend and colleague, Humayeh Aziz SARSHAR, and Debbie ادهمی, who has translated excerpts from In the Back Alleys of Exile.
Tonight I'm going to read some passages from my book in Persian, and Debbie will read it, the translation in English for you. That was the plan for the American audience to get familiar with the sound of Persian. I shall say that Debbie has chosen the passages that I'm reading, so this is her choice from my book. در آرزوی بازگشت از جلد اول. اگر من بازگردم ز نو بر دامن پرمهر البرز، به آوای حزین اندوه سنگین دلم را باز خواهم گفت. اگر من بازگردم سرم بر آستان درگه هر خانه خواهم سود، به بابا کوهی و حافظ غم بی هم زبانی را هزاران بار خواهم گفت. به سرو ناز شیراز، به آن تا بی نهایت مست و سرکش شکوه خواهم کرد. گریه خواهم کرد که در بین هزاران سرو بودم، ولی آزادگی، افسون و جادوی تو را در هیچ یک هرگز ندیدم. اگر من بازگردم به دشت پرشقایق کوچ خواهم کرد. گیاه و گل فراوان است در هر تپه و ماهور این وامانده شهر بیدر و پیکر، ولی یک دانش هرگز به چشمانم نمی آید. اگر من بازگردم به دریای خروشان خزر آهسته خواهم زد و آنگه اشکهایم را نثار خاک پای ساحلش بسیار خواهم کرد. شکوه خواهم کرد، گریه خواهم کرد که من در ساحل آسودگی ها، کنار بیکران دریای آرام، چه بی آرام بودم. چرا؟ آن افقهای محبت را هزاران بار افسوس، هزاران بار افسوس چه دور از دسترس دیدم. اگر من بازگردم یکایک چهره های آشنا را چه بیتاب و چه غمگین با سرانگشتان حسرت لمس خواهم کرد. اگر من بازگردم خدا داند چه غوغایی، چه شوری در وجود مرده و سردم و حتی در فلک بیدار خواهم کرد. فقط من بازگردم.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this honor and privilege to be able to read from your book, The Back Alleys of Exile. Among one of the first lessons learned in most English classes is that translation of foreign literature, in the translation of foreign literature, much of the authenticity of the work is lost. Farsi is very detail-oriented and exact, so this translation doesn't fully capture the beauty and harmony of the original work. I chose these passages because I felt they reflect the author's representation of the Persian culture, and in some form or another, most members of the Persian community can relate to these incidents. The first passage is the poem entitled A Wish to Return. HOMA SARSHAR comes from Shiraz, and that's a city in Iran, and her wish doesn't include, it also includes the wish to return to Shiraz, not just Iran in particular. There are some things in the poem that I couldn't translate for you. One was Hafiz. He is the most famous poet in Iran. He is from Shiraz. Baba Kui was a wise man who lived in Shiraz. And Sarvanaz was the famous tree in Iran, especially in Shiraz, that was known for its height and its age. And here's the poem, A Wish to Return. If I returned back to the base of the much-loved mountains of Alborz, with a choked cry, I will tell of the heaviness in my heart. If I return, I will lean my head against the doorframe of any house. I would call Hafiz and Baba Kuhi and repeat 1,000 times my grief over the lack of communion with another soul. I will complain and cry to the Sarvanaz in Shiraz that I was among thousands of trees, yet the freedom, mystery, and mysticism you hold I have never experienced, never seen. If I return, I will roam hillsides overflowing with wildflowers. Yet in this borderless country, where the hills and valleys are filled with flowers and greenery, my eyes can never see them. Never see even one blossom. If I return, I will slowly approach the roaring waters of the Caspian Sea. I will shed my tears on the edge of the shore. I cry a tortured wail. I murmur, I grieve, that while I was by the calm and serene waters of the Pacific Ocean, I was restless. Why? With 1,000 regrets, 1,000 regrets, the horizon of love and kindness, once so close, is now so far away. If I return, I will touch every familiar face with envious fingertips, even though the faces may be stricken with pain and unhappiness. If I return, God knows that the joyous celebration welling up in my soul would rouse my cold and lifeless body and wake up the entire world. If I return.
این بخش از یک نوشته است که در پشت جلد کتاب آوردم. هرچند غربت امروز با غربت 10 سال پیش از زمین تا آسمان فرق کرده است، هرچند غربت امروز آنقدر پدید رنگ به نظر می آید که شاید به زودی با سازش و حل شدن اشتباه شود، هرچند که من غریبه پس از یک سفر چند روزه در نهایت شگفتی حس می کنم دلم برای خانم در لس آنجلس تنگ شده است، نه برای خانم در تهران، ولی باز با سماجت یقه غربت را رها نمی کنم. انگار می ترسم خود را گم کنم. می ترسم بخشی از وجودم را از دست بدهم. می ترسم بی هویت شوم. به همین دلیل در حالی که امروز با تمام کوچه پس کوچه های شهر لس آنجلس آشنا هستم و در مقابل نام کوچه دوران کودکی یا نوجوانی خود را به سختی به یاد می آورم، باز هم اینجا را غربت و آنجا را خانه می نامم و دل را به این باور می سپارم که از خانه دورم.
Although the feeling of exile today pales in comparison to the feeling of exile from 10 years ago, this lifestyle of habit and getting along in a new land is often mistaken for the pain of our loss having been solved. Even though I am a foreigner, after a short trip of a few days, I wonder why I miss my home in Los Angeles and not my home in Tehran. Still, I hold on to my feelings of exile and I cannot let it go. It is as if I am afraid of losing my identity. I am afraid I will lose a piece of myself. I am afraid I will lose my existence. For this reason, though today I know and I am familiar with every back street and alley in Los Angeles, and on the other hand, I can hardly remember the names of the streets of my childhood, still, I call here exile and I call there home. I go through my days just convincing myself that I am far away from home.
شنبه 17 سپتامبر 1988. از هفته پیش برای امشب دعوت شده بودیم. آذر به مناسبت گرفتن گواهینامه تابعیت ایالات متحده آمریکا یک مهمانی بزرگ در خانه‌اش به راه انداخته بود تا تولدی دیگر را در سرزمین میزبان جشن بگیرد. طبق معمول زودتر از همه مهمانان رسیدیم. خانه خالی بود و آذر در آشپزخانه آخرین کارهای مهمانی را سر و سامان می‌داد. برخلاف انتظارم خوشحال به نظر نمی رسید. حتی چشمانش از گریه سرخ بود. آذر و همسرش چند هفته با هیجان منتظر فرارسیدن امروز که روز تابعیت سیتیزنشیپ دی خوانده می شود بودند تا به سالن بزرگ کانونشن سنتر بروند، در کنار هزاران نفر دیگر سوگند وفاداری به امریکا و پرچمش را یاد کنند و امریکایی شوند. برای این خانواده سالهاست ایران یک نام فراموش شده و یک داستان به پایان رسیده است. با دانستن همه این پیشینه گمان کردم در خانواده‌اش اتفاقی افتاده که این چنین اندوهگین است. علت را که پرسیدم باز اشک در چشمانش حلقه زد. روی صندلی نشست و گفت حالم خیلی گرفته. صبح که رفتیم برای قسم خوردن، بعد از 2 ساعت معطلی ما رو به سالن بزرگ کانونشن سنتر هدایت کردند. یه زن و شوهر ایرانی دیگه هم بغل ما بودند که پشت سر ما نشستند. همه خیلی هیجان زده و خوشحال بودیم، ولی مرد پشت سری در هم و گرفته به نظر می رسید. آخر مراسم وقتی از ما خواستند از جا برخیزیم و یک صدا سرود ملی امریکا را بخونیم، در میان آن کور عظیم که سالن را پر کرده بود، از پشت سرم صدای مرد را شنیدم که با فریاد سرود ای ایران ای مرز پرگوهر را می‌خواند. برگشتم و پشت سرم را نگاه کردم. دیدم مرد که مثل ما دست راستش رو سینه‌اش گذاشته بود، یک پرچم کوچک ایران را در کف دستش می‌فشرد، به پهنای صورتش اشک می‌ریخت و سرود می‌خواند. از دیدن این منظره بدجور تکان خوردم. آن مرد پس از پایان مراسم به من گفت به خاطر دخترش که تازه از ایران فرار کرده و به امریکا آمده تبعه می شود تا او بتواند اجازه اقامت بگیرد، ولی از این کار احساس شرمندگی می کند. آن شب مهمانی منزل آذر مثل همیشه گرم نبود. شاید به نظر من چنین می آمد، چون هر بار وی را نگاه می کردم همچنان مغموم و در همش می دیدم و به یاد داستان آن مرد ایرانی می افتادم. قلب مرد هموطن من هنوز حکم صادر شده از سوی مغزش را نپذیرفته بود.
I had been invited for the Saturday night since last week, the occasion being a huge party to celebrate my friend Azar's swearing in to be a U.S. citizen. As usual, I was early to arrive and the house was devoid of guests. The hostess was doing final preparations in the kitchen. Contrary to my expectations, she didn't look happy. You could even see that her eyes were red-rimmed. She and her husband were so excited and were waiting for weeks for this day, to go to the convention center among the thousands of other people to pledge allegiance to the United States and its flag. This family had been so culturally assimilated, it seemed as if it had been years that they forgot the name of Iran. Knowing all these facts, I thought that there had been an unfortunate tragedy in the family. When I expressed my concern, I saw tears well up in her eyes. She sat on her comfortable chair and said, "I feel so blue. This morning, when we went to the swearing-in ceremony, it took 2 hours to get into the convention center. There happened to be another Iranian couple there also. We were all excited and happy except for the other man, who looked so preoccupied and sad. At the end of the ceremony, they asked us to stand and sing the national anthem of the United States. Among all the voices of the thousands of people I heard the voice of the man behind me. His voice booming, he was singing, Ey Iran, ey marz porgohar. When I turned around, I saw his right hand over his heart, just like the rest of us, but in his hand, against his heart, he was clutching a small flag of Iran, and the tears rolled down his cheeks. At the end, he looked at me, and without any reason at all, he offered this explanation. I had to do this for my daughter. She just escaped from Iran to join us. I feel so ashamed for what I'm doing here today. That night, Azar's party was not warm. It didn't bloom into fun, or maybe it didn't seem that good to me. Every time I looked at her, I saw the sorrow and the pain, and remembered the story of the man whose heart had not accepted his fate.
جمعه 19 می 1989. برای چند ساعتی نگهداری از بچه کوچک خواهرم را که پسرکی شیطان دوست داشتنی است به عهده گرفتم. با هم عالمی داریم، خاله و خواهرزاده. بی خجالت با او بچه میشوم، دنبالش میدوم، سر و صدا راه میاندازیم، بالا و پایین میپریم، به زبان بچه ها با هم حرف میزنیم. مدتها سر صدای خنده های شاد یک بچه کوچک در خانه ما طنین نینداخته است. بچه های خودم بزرگ شدند ولی در رفتار با بچه ها هنوز همان حال هوای 2 دهه پیش را دارم. هنگامی که از دویدن و جست و خیز خسته میشوم و میدان را به رقیب کوچولوی پرتوانم میبازم، با شگردی مادرانه او را روی زانویم مینشانم و چند بازی ایرانی را برایش شروع میکنم. لیلی لیلی حوزک، آتیش دارم بالاترک، اتل متل توتوله. او با چشمان گرد درشت خود مرا نگاه میکند و نمیداند چه باید بکند یا چه باید بگوید. قلم و کاغذ را پیش میکشم، برایش چشم 2 ابرو، دماغ و دهن یک گردو را میکشم. از سر اجبار خنده‌ای میکند ولی حواسش جای دیگر است. مرتب تلویزیون را نشان میدهد. تلویزیون را روشن میکنم، خوشبختانه برنامه سسمی استریت را پخش میکند. میپرد جلوی تلویزیون و یک شخصیت‌های عروسکی برنامه را با صدای بلند معرفی میکند. بیگ برد، برنی، ماریا و بقیه. با آنها جان میگیرد و زبانش باز میشود. ABCD را میخواند و 1 2 3 را میشمارد. من با شوق زیاد او را نگاه میکنم ولی از خود میپرسم پس لیلی لیلی حوزک و اتل متل توتوله را چیکار کنیم؟ هنگامی که خواهرم سراغ پسرش میآید از او میپرسم مژگان اندرو رو با چه بازیایی سرگرم میکنی؟ میگوید خیلی بازی بلده، شعراش هم میخونه. میپرسم کدوما مثلا؟ پسرش را صدا میزند و هر دو با هم شروع میکنند به خواندن Itsy bitsy spider, ring around the corner, row your boat. و پسر خواهر شیطان و دوست داشتنیم تون آنها را میخواند و مادر را همراهی میکند. انگشت شست دست چپم را با انگشتان دست راستم میگیرم و با حسرت میگویم این کله گنده خوردش. ایتسی بیتسی سپایدر اینا لیلی لیلی حوزک ما رو خوردش.
I accepted to take care of my lovable and shaytun nephew. This responsibility is such a pleasure for me, as he is my sister's son. I become free like a child when tending to him. I run after him, and we jump up and down. We make baby talk. It has been a long time since our home has had the sounds of children's voices. My own kids had grown up, but now I have the same feelings as when they were young. When I get tired of running around, I lose to him. So I put him on my knees and I start to play Persian children's games with him. Lili Lili Hozak, Atan Matan Tutule. He sits there staring at me, not knowing what to do or what to say. I take a pen and paper and I draw a face, singing the Persian song describing the features. He forces himself to laugh because he feels obligated. His attention is elsewhere. I go to turn on the TV and luckily Sesame Street was on. One by one, he introduces all the characters, Big Bird, Bernie, and Maria. Then he recites the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and starts counting 1, 2, 3. I look at him with pride and joy. Then I ask myself, what happens to Lili Lili Hozak and Atal Matal Tutule? When my sister came home, I asked her, what kind of games do you play to occupy Andrew? She says he knows many games and he knows how to sing all of the nursery rhymes. I asked, which ones? And she says, row, row, row your boat, and ring around the rosy, and the itsy bitsy spider. Being as shaytun as he is, he started to sing the rhymes, fast accompanying his mother. Then I took my left thumb and my right fingers and realized that this itsy bitsy spider took over Lili Lili Hozak.